Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi calling in, this time from Paris, France. And I'll actually be here until December 27th, just for some time with family and for a vacation. And I'm curious because I haven't asked any of you this yet, but let me know where you're calling in from in the comment section on YouTube. Would love to see how geographically diverse we all are, calling in from all across the maybe country and maybe even the world. So let me know where you're calling in from. I am across the world in, of course, Paris, France right now. And today on this episode of On the Move, it's, of course, December 15th, and I will be answering your questions. So if you have any questions that you want me to ask, drop them in the comment section, and I'll try to get to as many as I possibly can during this time period that we have together. But first, I just want to talk about the news of the day. So don't be afraid. Drop in your questions. I already see the comment section. Well, we have someone from Canada, from Pennsylvania. Wonderful, wonderful news. So let me know where you're calling in from. But first, let's talk about the news of the day. Yesterday, and this is, I think, should give us a lot of levity and joy and happiness. Speaker Pelosi unveiled her portrait with a member of Congress in attendance, with members of Congress in attendance, and even former Speaker of the House John Boehner yesterday, who gave a beautiful tribute to the Speaker, who actually choked up a little bit talking about how big of an influence Speaker Pelosi has had on her daughters, just what their friendship has meant, and even though they don't see eye to eye politically, I think they can both respect each other for the work that they've done, and especially former Speaker Boehner talking to Speaker Pelosi. You could sense that he really values their friendship and just everything that Speaker Pelosi stands for. You know, you may not agree with her politically, but at the end of the day, she is a trailblazer. She is someone who has led Democrats through ups and downs, and really was able to count votes when it mattered, passing the Affordable Care Act in this Congress with just a few Democratic majority votes. So it's a really good, I think, indication of hopefully everything to come. Obviously, Hakeem Jeffries is going to be the new, minority leader in the House and leading Democrats. But Speaker Pelosi's time in Congress has really been an amazing triumph. And she's not done yet. She's still going to serve in this Congress, just in a different kind of capacity. But she has had such a storied and such an illustrative career throughout this time in Congress. And I think, we should definitely all be so grateful for her, because without her, and remember on January 6th, even, it was Speaker Pelosi who effectively became president. She was the one who was making the calls, who was keeping everyone calm. And that's when we saw, I think, the best of Speaker Pelosi. And, we remember that moment when she stood up to Trump and she was the only woman standing in the room full of men. And so she is such a great example, not only for young girls and women in America, but I think across the world. So her impact will continue generations to come. And I think that's a great example for the next generation of leaders. There was also some concerning news yesterday that I read out of the state of Texas with its Republican Attorney General, Ken Paxton, who basically demanded a list of transgender individuals in Texas. This story first broke out of the Washington Post, and they basically reported that employees at the Texas Department of Safety received a letter and demanded basically them to compile a list of individuals in Texas who changed their gender identity on driver's license and other government records. And they weren't given a reason why they should do that. So, we don't know the explicit reason for why they did that. But I think if I were to make, a conjecture and just kind of look at what's happened in the past, this is another indication, I think, of a state that has really come after the lives of, the LGBTQ community. We first saw that with the efforts to ban transgender participation in various sports and bathrooms. Well, so I think you have a lot of this kind of pattern in Texas of this Republican state legislature and Republican governor all coming after this. Young people in Texas, LGBTQ people in Texas. And so I think that's kind of one front of it that I think is quite cynical, and we should all be outraged by, we should all be concerned by. It's something that I think should provide us all with deep concern, because no attorney general should be asking for a list of those who have changed their identities. And you have to wonder why he's doing this now, what the motive for it is. Is it to harass? Is it to intimidate? Is it to come after young people and LGBTQ people in Texas? You have to wonder why. And so it's really suspicious. And I think it also speaks to yet another kind of reminder of why down ballot races matter. In this past election, we were beating the drum. I was beating the drum about why we must vote for down ballots. We see state legislatures across the country that are basically acting as the bulwark against states like Texas. And so we have to make sure that we vote down ballot for good candidates who don't, for instance, come after and demand a list of transgender people in the state. So that's something that I think was quite significant yesterday that I don't think will be the last that we'll hear of this story. Last night, the House also passed a temporary funding bill that would keep the government running until next Friday, averting a government shutdown until next Friday, basically. But now the bill goes to the Senate, where I'm sure it'll pass, and then the president's signature. And I think it's important to underscore that this is just a 1 week funding bill. But at the same time, it's also important to note that all but 9 Republicans voted against this bill. They essentially voted against keeping government running, against keeping government functioning. They are people who I just don't think recognize and appreciate the role that government has, and they just don't want. I think it's pushing the holiday seasons. They would rather see chaos and division, and I think a government shut down than a government that keeps functioning. And so I think this is yet another indication of this Republican Party that is unwilling to legislate, unwilling to compromise, and they really speak through their votes. There's no other indication of that. So we'll all be seeing what happens in the Senate. Chuck Schumer says that there should be something by the end of today. So we'll see what happens and keep you posted on that in the coming days. A couple more things. This morning, the White House announced that it's going to reinstate a great policy, I think, that'll keep all of us safer and healthier, which is its free at-home COVID testing program. So that means that every American now has the ability to order free COVID tests at home. It's another reminder that COVID isn't over yet. I think a lot of people are getting tired of the pandemic, but we're still seeing hospitalizations and infections rise. I was in LA a couple of days ago, and just in LA, cases have soared over 75%. And so I think with this winter season, we all want to make sure that we stay safe, we stay healthy, and that's why this administration has responded to the growing reality of what COVID is presenting. I don't think we're going to go back to forced isolation and mask mandates, but we have to make sure that we stay healthy. If we test positive, quarantine, make sure that you don't see others around you. I know my co-host Jill actually just got COVID for the first time in these 3 years. And so, just because you haven't gotten it yet, you're not immune. Anyone can get it. And so these COVID tests hopefully should provide some comfort about, where you fall. And so the website to do that is special.usps.com/test kits. Again, that's special.usps.com/test kits. And you can find all the information there. And so everyone is eligible for a free COVID test, which is great news. And lastly, before I answer your questions, we got some pretty sad news yesterday about Stephen Laurel Twitch Boss, otherwise known as Twitch, who you might know famously from Ellen DeGeneres' show. He was a talented dancer. He was her DJ, and he was a father to 3 and husband. And yesterday he took his life, and it's, I think, a really sad reminder that we never know what's going on in someone else's life. We should, never hesitate to offer our help, our sincere, just outreach to people in our lives, keep people close in your life. And I thought he wrote a beautiful message a couple of weeks before yesterday that I thought is worth remembering and sharing far and wide during this moment. I think we can sometimes forget about some of the challenges in life and just what it means to get through it. And so he wrote just before he took his life, "One of my favorite parts of flying on a cloudy day is when the plane breaks through the clouds to reveal the beautiful day that's just beyond the cloud ceiling. A great reminder for life on the vastness of the idea that, quote, everything will be all right. And if we can just have faith that just beyond whatever clouds are on our perceived ceilings are clear skies full of potential, possibilities, and promises." So I think that's just such a beautiful written, statement. It is so true. We all are struggling through something, but if we can just take it one day at a time, one step at a time, there will always be hopefully some light and hope. So keep those around you close, check in on them. Just quick check-in every day does not hurt. So let's get into your questions. So again, let me know if you have any questions in the chat box. I will be sure to get to them. But first we have some pre-submitted questions. So from Christina in Los Angeles, she asks, "The Respect for Marriage Act is great for preemptively protecting our rights from the courts in the lame duck, are there any other issues that need to be taken up? I couldn't agree more with you in terms of the Respect for Marriage Act. I think it's a great first step for the Supreme Court and Republicans who are trying to overturn basic fundamental rights. Again, the Respect for Marriage Act, the whole point of that was because Justice Clarence Thomas in his Dobbs decision said that abortion wouldn't be the end. He's also urging the court to consider things like interracial marriage, which is decided by Loving versus Virginia, or Obergefell versus, that decision. Obergefell basically guaranteed same-sex marriage. And so all of those decisions he thinks should be on the chopping block. And so we can't take any of our rights for granted. I think it's a great first step. Now, again, this Respect for Marriage Act only requires states to recognize other states that require same-sex marriage. So in other words, if Obergefell does fall, that means that 32 states will immediately have in place trigger bans on same-sex marriage. And so I think that's concerning. I think that's why the state legislatures are so important. We saw Pennsylvania and Michigan this time around, and some other states like Maryland flip from red to blue state legislatures. And so hopefully all of them can codify same-sex marriage in their constitution before the Supreme Court acts. But I don't think it's likely that the Supreme Court's going to overturn Obergefell. But again, we can't take anything for granted. In terms of other issues that I think need to be taken up, I think there are many, many other issues. It's just whether it's even possible before the lame duck session ends. Right now, I think Congress is really focused on passing an omnibus bill to fund the government through next year. But if they have the time, and if anyone who is listening who might be working on the Hill or who might be an elected official themselves, I think that voting rights are very important. As we all know, the next Congress, it's not going to be very friendly for all of our rights with Republicans in control. Voting rights with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, Protect Democracy Act, those things should be top of mind, I think, for a lot of people. And then also, I think things like protecting contraception access. That was another thing that Justice Thomas said would be on the chopping block. So I think there are some issues that I think should definitely be raised. It's just a matter of will they even have the time to do so? And I know the holidays are coming up, the New Year is coming up, and then I think the new Congress is sworn January 3rd or 4th, but it'll be not long after the New Year. So that will be, I think, hopefully they can get some other things passed, but it's just a matter of running up the clock, I think, right now. I have a question from Jess in Seattle, Washington. And this is interesting. There's an effort to ban TikTok from US platforms based on security concerns. Is this a smart play, or will it alienate young people in inter-country cooperation? Great question. So yesterday, the Senate passed a bipartisan bill that would ban TikTok from only government-issued devices. Again, that's the Senate passed it. It's also wait for a vote in the House, but that's only for government-based devices. So if you're working at, for example, DOJ or the White House, you cannot download TikTok on your app because of security concerns. And this is something that the Trump administration identified, something that I think President Biden and Democrats right now are continuing to acknowledge, the national security concerns. There's another bill that's a bipartisan bill that is yet to get passed. I don't think it'll get passed before the new year, and I don't think it'll get passed anytime soon. But basically, it would remove TikTok from all devices in the U.S. And if that happens, I think you're going to see a lot of young people, especially because TikTok is really popular among young people. That's a place where entertainment is possible. That's a place where more news is being consumed. I think it's a great place for young people to consume their news. Of course, there's misinformation, there's disinformation. That's more of the algorithm problem that I think should be sorted out with TikTok. But if they get rid of TikTok, I think young people are definitely going to be outraged, definitely going to be a little bit, disappointed and sad in what the government did. I think, there should definitely be another way around this. I'm not quite sure I know the answer to that, but hopefully there's another way around this than banning TikTok completely. Hopefully we can work out some agreement with TikTok. Obviously, the U.S. has its concerns about it being owned by, a Chinese corporation. And so there are security concerns. But I think for a lot of young people at the end of the day, there are some real benefits to having TikTok in terms of expressing oneself, in terms of consuming information, being connected with a community of young people, staying up to date with trends. I think it's a great platform for many things, and I hope that it survives, just like I hope, Twitter survives. And I hope that we can work out some sort of agreement with TikTok. But if it does happen, I think you're going to see a lot of young people feel alienated and also disappointed. The next question I have is something that we talked about last week. and that is the primary schedule. And this is a question from John in Denver, Colorado. He asks, the Democrats are upending the primary schedule and ignoring the retail politics made possible by New Hampshire and Iowa. Is this a good idea, or is it important for an on-the-ground kickoff with a relatively independent state? So here's what's happening with the primary schedule. Nothing official has been voted on. There have been, key considerations, and they're proposing South Carolina to be the first primary state in 2024 for Democrats. But I'm coming at this from the angle of someone who ran to become a delegate, so I know how the primary process works, and also someone who, campaigned for Biden back in 2020. And I can tell you this: I think Iowa and New Hampshire serve purposes that I think don't align with the Democratic Party anymore. I'm not saying Iowa and New Hampshire aren't important states. I think they're very important states to gauge certain demographics, but I think those demographics are straying further away from the Democratic base. Right now, the Democratic base is more diverse, more younger. It's also more Black, more Hispanic, more Asian. It's just more diverse in general. And New Hampshire and Iowa happen to be states where it's not that diverse. And so that's why I think South Carolina is a great first step for Democrats in the primary season, because I think it's a great test for a lot of Democrats who want to see how they want to do in the field early on. And I think it's a great first test. We saw, for example, Pete Buttigieg did great in Iowa, but when it came to South Carolina or states where it was more diverse, he faltered. And so I think it's a great first test for candidates who want to gauge how they're doing. I think it's a great indication that the Democratic Party is going to put its base of voters front and center, give them the opportunity to shape the narrative, shape the conversation. And I think Iowa and New Hampshire, they'll definitely get their time to shine, but I think it's a good move for Democrats to get an on-the-ground kickoff with a relatively reflective state that kind of embodies what their base stands for. So that, I think, is a great move. And I think we have time for one more question, but keep on asking your questions, and hopefully I'll get to them later tomorrow. I know we have Glenn Kirshner on, but maybe tomorrow after the show we can get to them, or next week we can get to them. But let's do one more. Javier from Boston asks a similar question. Would you support a Biden run for re-election, or is it time for the old guard to give way to those more familiar with the issues affecting all of us who are under 50? That's a really good question. I think, obviously I support younger people in office. I think young people deserve a seat at the table. I personally think that President Biden should still run for office in 2024. Sure, he won't be the youngest president. He's going to be the oldest president still. But I think his actions and his commitment to delivering on the issues speak really loudly. And, remember, he's the president, yes, but he's created an administration that has reflected America. I was interning there over the past summer, and I got to see this administration that was so diverse. You saw a lot of young people, millennials, and even Gen Zers serve in his administration. It's been a core tenet. There's an office in the presidency called the Presidential Personnel Office, and that's the office that is in charge of all the decisions and all the hiring decisions that happen. And they have a great motto this time around called "People are Policy." So effectively what that means is, the people that you create, the people that you bring into government, that's what helps create good policies. And I know this administration has helped create some amazing policies, and that's because you have diverse people at the table with input. And I think that President Biden and his administration recognize the importance of young people, which is why they're bringing young people in. Unfortunately, today I couldn't go to an event at the White House, but there's an event at the White House happening right now called the Youth and Communities Action event, to bring in young people from across the country, listening to their concerns, and then acting on their concerns. So I think it's a great thing that this administration is doing. Yes, he won't be the youngest person in office, but I think he really recognizes the importance of young people, and he's bringing us into the table by, whether it's listening to our voices and perspectives, or literally bringing young people to serve in his administration and serve in key positions. So I think it'll definitely, he's giving young people a platform just in another way. And I think in the coming future, I think you're going to see a lot of great Democratic candidates on the younger side who are going to run for office. But I think at least in 2024, I think President Biden is going to be running, and I think we should all be supporting his run, because we've just seen what he's been able to do in these past 4 years, and I don't think any of that is going to stop anytime soon. So that is all the time that we have with us today. So thank you everyone for joining, and hopefully I was able to answer some questions and help you make sense of the news of the day. We'll be back tomorrow for another great episode of On the Move, and I'm telling you, you're not going to want to miss it. It's with legal expert and justice warrior, Glenn Kirshner. He'll be joining me to talk about all the legal news of the day, why it's important for all of us, why it's important for young people to see accountability and justice in this system. You're not going to want to miss that. Tune in tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, or if you're in Paris or international, you can join at 5 p.m. Paris time, which is when I'll be calling in from. So be sure to join us then. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great day and stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day. Thanks so much.